Welcome to my MSI 2024 player tier list. I was going to do this pre-recorded, but I chose to do it live instead. So there's a lot of thinking out loud and backtracking here and there and going back and forth on ideas. I encourage comments and discussion, but please don't be toxic towards each other and flame each other because this player's here and that player's there. But nevertheless, I'm going to be co-streaming MSI starting 10 a.m. 1st of May. Don't forget to be there, twitch.tv/Caedrel. And if you enjoy the video, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you guys for watching and enjoy. Before I jump into this video, I just want to let you guys know about an awesome giveaway that might interest all of the League of Legends fans out there. Signal RGB, a leading brand in RGB software, is giving away an epic gaming PC that looks just like the Nexus. Alongside the recognizable Nexus exterior, the top can be lifted to reveal the parts inside, a 3070 Ti graphics card, 11900K processor, 32GB of RAM, and 1TB SSD. All of the RGB is fully customizable with the Signal RGB application, which controls and syncs RGB devices from any brand. And there's even a game integration, so you can have your RGB reacting to abilities while you're casting. To enter the giveaway, make sure you click the link down below. Enjoy the video. Now, I feel like it's very hard to rate a few of these roles, and top lane is one of them. Because in my eyes, right, and I think in everyone's eyes, the Eastern top laners are obviously above the Western top laners, right? There's a gap. And then I think a lot of it can come down to nuance, right? I think there's a lot of arguments for some different players, you know? For example, Bin and 369, if you only watch their finals, they actually went 2-2 in those 4 games, I think. If anything, I think 369 played better in those games because 369 won lane and is also a better map player. So Bin actually got gapped. And when Bin was the one winning the lane in 2 out of 4 of those games, it was when team came and helped, right? But if you watch there, like game 1, for example, you can see Renekton versus Aatrox. I think 369 is just straight up winning that lane in isolation. And like he had perma push top early game. He was gapping him in just direct lane phase for the majority of the game. And even on side lane, after they got Baron, Top Esports was winning the game. And Bin, I feel like Bin just made like this silly mistake. I can see why he goes for it, but he goes for like this all-in and like dies 1v1 to 369 when they're playing 1-4, which you can't really afford to do that. You just need to drop the tier 2 sometimes because that can murder your tempo for your team. So, you know, and then you look at game 2 when I think this is the game that Bin quote-unquote gapped 369, but he's playing Rek'Sai into Renekton, and 369 was under a lot of threat, and when the lane broke, it wasn't from lane phase, it was from jungle support coming, right? And that was a story of Bin's lane phase. It was never won in isolation fully, whereas 369's kind of was. Looking at finals lane phase in more recent times, I think 369 outperformed Bin. So in my opinion, 369 is the better of the two. I'm not going to be a 1 series Andy, but if you look at 369, he's kind of evolved as a player. 369, everyone talked about him in JDG as an Ornn, Cassante, Renekton weak side main, right? Now he's kind of a carry player a bit. He's playing way more Aatrox, way more Renekton, more Rumble. You know, the tanks are dropping a little bit more. So he still plays things like Ornn when he needs to, but he's also playing carries. I feel like 369 has become a more complete player. And he's always been a complete player, but he's showing it now. I think it was really nice for him to beat JDG as well, especially in ending up against Flandre. And I think 369 did much better than Flandre in that series. I like his Urgot pick. I like this Urgot pick into Rek'Sai. I feel like he's one of the players in the world who can really counter it. Now, Rek'Sai's nerfed for MSI, right? So all the Rek'Sai merchants are going to get a bit rolled. There's a few champions that I think some people are maining that are going to struggle when they're removed. For example, Rek'Sai's nerfed. For example, Rel is nerfed, which a lot of junglers relied on Rel. So Azir got nerfed a little bit, right? And Zac, but I don't know if those two nerfs are enough to kill the champ. In terms of raw form, I would favor 369 over Bin. Now, just touching on the LCK a little bit, I mean, Zeus got outperformed in that finals really hard. Zeus was invisible in the finals. If you only watch the finals, you would say that Zeus is a B-tier top laner. Zeus struggled with Rek'Sai. I think Rek'Sai was something that he never really picked up properly, and other people did. And when other people were playing things like Rek'Sai and Rumble and Cassante, Zeus's idea of the meta shifted to range tops. I don't know why, but he was playing things like TF and Vayne, basically. I don't know who was adamant in TF being the strong champ, because all throughout the regular season, this motherfucker would just blind Aatrox every game. Look at that. And then you get to playoffs, and for some reason, he's maining TF, and he's playing Zac in here and there. His Zac was not bad, I'll give him that. But if you look at his finals performance, you'll think that this guy's... I mean, Zeus was disgusting in finals. Like, he is in the Shy arc. I mean, just count the scoreline. It's basically the Shy World Finals all over again. Getting perma-caught on side lanes. Zeus, I think, out of these 4 top laners, I would say Zeus has the better lane phase of all of them. When he is playing at his peak, and Zeus has very high highs. Like, he's just inconsistent. I think Personally, his lane phase is the best of the four when he's in his mode, you know? The problem is he's not in his mode, and he choked a little bit in that finals. Getting solo killed by Cassante twice was really uncommon for him. It's funny, because all throughout the regular season, you'd look at it and you'd be like, wow, Zeus is just gapping everyone, you know? I'm not going to just be a stats Andy, but he was gapping every top laner. Just he perma died. Then you get to the playoffs, and like, to be down 2 CS on 15 on average when you're playing ranged top laners a lot is disgusting. And I know that I think 1 or 2 games he got lane swapped on, but being down to your opponent in CS when you're being a ranged top lane main is like... you can contextualize stats in that sense where you're like, how is that possible? So Zeus, I think, has slipped a little bit for me. I'm going to put him in A tier. I think Zeus is a really good player. I think he is, if he gets his shit together for MSI and Rek'Sai being nerfed will help him, I think he's easily an S tier top laner. He's one of the best top laners in the world. And I think the biggest thing for Zeus is Rek'Sai nerfs are huge. I wouldn't be surprised to see Zeus be the best top laner of the tournament. I wouldn't. I think the meta is good for him. It's not bad. I think the meta is pretty good for him. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Zeus be the best top laner in the tournament. I feel like I've got a bit more info on Keen because I sat down with the Relevant and watched about 4 or 5 of Keen's, 2 or 3 of Keen's games from his POV. And the only problem I have with Keen right now, in my opinion, is everyone's hyping him up. I do think he's a Cassante merchant. I do. I am sold that he's a Cassante merchant. Rek'Sai nerfs coming in won't hurt Keen too much. He didn't become a Rek'Sai merchant. But he is a Cassante main, and that scares me a little bit because, I mean, his Rumble was good. But with Rek'Sai being out and Cassante being his blind pick, when Aatrox is picked a lot and Camille is back in the meta, I feel like other players will kind of gloss over him a bit. Is he a Camille player? No, not really. Because I personally think the way the meta's been shifting, Camille is going to be a really strong top. Galio might be quite strong. Aatrox will be strong. Renekton will be strong. So obviously he can cover off a few of those. The only problem I have with him is his champ pool. I think his laning phase is incredible. I think his map play is good. His team fighting is insane. So for me, he's an S tier player. I worry about his champ pool a little bit. Man, where should I put Zeus? I feel like with recent performance, he's A tier. With regular split performance, he's S tier. I would say he's A+. The problem I have with this is I think personally at MSI, I think the best performing top laner at MSI will probably be Zeus, if I had to gamble. I think he is least affected by top lane changes and most benefited by top lane changes, IMO. Or is he's not, he does have a few Camille games, right? He just hasn't been playing for long, I think is the problem. But I'm going to put him in A tier. We'll see what happens. Bin is the tricky one for me. I think Bin's in A tier with Zeus. I don't know what to think about Bin. Like I said in those finals, I think 369 was the better player, but Bin is an insanely good top laner. I think Jax is permabanned versus him, of course, and he is a bit of a Jax merchant. All these top laners play the same thing. They just play Aatrox Cassante. Bin is really good. He can play everything. Obviously, he doesn't play tanks as much, which is the notion around Bin, but I think he can play tanks as well. What is my problem with Bin? His Rumble's trash. I'll give him that. His Rumble is dog shit. He is a mediocre Rek'Sai merchant. Is he inconsistent? What were those semis like? Like I said, by the way, I'm doing this live. I was going to pre-record this, but I'm doing this live. So that's why I'm probably going back and forth. Is Bin too aggressive? No. I think Bin's solid. I don't know what I'm thinking about A tier. Bin is solid. What were these semifinals? I don't remember what he played. Rek'Sai, Renekton, Rek'Sai, TF. The TF game was good. He was smurfing on TF this game. He was a really big pain point for Tess having to catch sides before objectives. They were always pushed in like mid waves, side waves. Everything was just... He just covered it off well. It was one of his best games. But I don't like the idea of having Bin and Nest. I don't know. Does this look weird? 369 Keen and Bin are world class. And I would put Zeus. I honestly think all the top laners coming from the Eastern region are all insanely good. There's not a top laner where I'm like, yeah, they're kind of mid. You know, if JDG was here and Flandre was here, I could see it, you know. If Humalife was here with Doran, I could also see him being a tier down. But I actually think all of these top laners that are at the tournament are all insanely good. The only reason for me putting Zeus in A tier is I can find flaws easily in Zeus's recent performance, but I can't find flaws in other top laners' recent performance. Keen's not S tier, bro. Keen is easily S tier. Keen's lane phase was on par with Zeus throughout the regular season. His lane phase was on par with Zeus's. He didn't play as much Aatrox blind. He was obviously playing his Cassante blind. And in playoffs, he outperformed him. So I think overall, that is a very safe assumption to say Keen's in there. I think 369 is the best top laner of the tournament. So I could make a tier S+ and put 369 in it. But I feel like that's doing Zeus dirty. Because this is the problem I have with tier lists, right? I think moving forwards, I had an idea for this tournament to do like 4 categories and rate out of 10 on those categories. And that would be a much better measure of the player rather than they are this letter because of this. I'm going to put Zeus in A tier. If you hate it, I'm sorry. All right, Oscarinin, I think, is the worst top laner of the tournament. I personally think Oscarinin is the worst top laner of the tournament. He's had a really rough year. I hope he can bounce back. I don't want him to see this and think like, wow, I'm being shit on. I think he can just move into the tournament with no pressure. It's his first international. He doesn't have to sweat it. Did he play at Worlds last year? Second international. Go in with no fear. Just play your heart out and do your best. He's like the least experienced, and yeah, he had a rough year. So I mean, there's nothing to defend. Oscarinin was the weakest player on Fnatic. Yeah, Oscar last year was pretty good. Oscar last year was really good, but this year, I feel like Oscar's, yeah, his lane phase has been weak. He's been randomly getting solo killed, caught out. His finals was okay the last game, but yeah, some of these games he was, obviously another problem I think he has is the lane swaps. I think he has not got much of a clue what he's doing in some of these lane swap, and his Zac was a very big band-aid to some of his games. You could see in a lot of these games he was just completely out of it. He's still a good player, though. I think he has a high ceiling. I just think he's lost his momentum and his confidence. Impact, Broken Blade, and Bwipo, I think, are all really good. I want to put Impact above Broken Blade, personally. I know people think Bwipo is the best top laner of the West, and people argue between Broken Blade and Bwipo being the best top laner in the West. If I had to... The way I'm rating this is if I had to have a top laner on my team to play the game at an international, and I had to choose between the 3, I would choose Impact. I'll give my reason, of course. I think Impact is such a reliable rock, and I think if you look at the styles of teams, how can I show you all the teams? I'm going to put all the teams here, right? How many of these teams are top-sided teams, right? How many of these teams are top-sided teams? I would argue these are the 2 top-sided teams in the tournament. Would you agree? And the rest of the teams are mid-bot-sided. I would not argue T1 is a top-sided team. I don't think Zeus gets, like, resources, you know? Yeah, BLG is not a top-sided team at all. I don't think it's a bad way to play, but I think, for example, a nice example would be like if Gen G went against FlyQuest, I think both of them have kind of similar styles, you know? Like their bot lanes are a bit weak. And this is all on paper from games you see on stage, obviously. Their bot lane looks like the weaker version of the team, and their top side is just insane. Their mid jungle is insane. And I think FlyQuest is kind of similar. I think Bwipo is the best player on their team. I actually do. And I think Bwipo Inspired is an insane top jungle. I just feel like if you go against a team like Gen G, you'll lose. If you don't get a big enough top lane lead, topside lead against teams like you know, T1 or top esports, you'll lose. And I feel like their style won't really match well into the better top laners. Like, for example, against Impact, it didn't work very well. Impact's just this fucking rock. I've been seeing a lot of stats of Kiaya, and apparently he's insanely good. Broken Blade, to me, the reason Broken Blade's here, and people might disagree with this, is he hasn't shown me enough, personally. I feel like I get this notion from when I see Broken Blade is he is smurfing domestically, he gets to internationals, and he is invisible. He is. He is just invisible. And I think he becomes a liability sometimes in internationals. And I don't care if he solo killed top every game of the entire split. I would never put him up here. Because when he gets to international, and he does well, is when I'll start to reconsider it. And I'm sorry if that's not a good enough analysis, but I think he, in isolation, if it was domestic tournament, I think Broken Blade is the better top laner. But Impact is better in internationals and more reliable. And Bwipo's style is so incredibly aggressive that I feel like it becomes something you have to play for. And I think as an isolated top laner, he's insanely good. But I'm not a fan of the way the game's played. Not to say it's a bad thing, you know. I don't think Bwipo's bad at all. I think Bwipo is, like I said, the best player in the tournament. And he leads the fucking charge. Actually, maybe Bwipo. Yeah, Bwipo is really good. I don't know. Rating these 3 is hard. Do you want the reliability? Do you want the carry top? Or do you want the top laner who's really good domestically, who's never really shown international? Which one do you want? I personally think this is stylistic choice. And that's why I said I think it's hard to rate. It's hard to rate these top laners, you know? Because again, you could argue Zeus has the higher ceiling of the 4 and a better lane phase. You could argue Tristan has the higher reliability. You could argue Keen is choking in internationals and playing bad. You could argue Bin, in his last international best of 5 in the semis, he underperformed and got outperformed really hard by the Shy that cost him an entire semi-final. You know, I think there's arguments in every direction, and that's why I think a lot of these tier lists are subjective. I'll argue that personally I would favor Impact on my team in international. Broken Blade's shown a lot and is a really strong top laner and flexible, and Bwipo is an incredibly good carry top laner. I think all of them, I don't like this notion of B, but I think they're all about the same, and you can choose which one you think is best. All right, I think that top lane list is fine. I think I'm happy with that. I don't think there's anything too egregiously crazy in there. Let's do jungle. See, jungle is where a lot of funny stuff is going to happen. I'm going to go ahead and say it because everyone's thinking it. Kenyon's the best jungler in the world. IMO. He's instantly S tier. And I don't think you can ever use the argument that Canyon will underperform an international, because every single international Canyon's been at, he is stepping up, is sometimes the sole reason that he drags his team across the finish line sometime, and is the only reason that they're even competitive. I think he's the most creative jungler in the world as well, in the sense that he will play picks. The second he picked that Kazakhs in that game in the finals, and he won on it, and he played well on the Kazakhs, I knew this guy is uncontestable, because he is willing, especially considering they're on match point. Now, it might not, it's only one pick, right? And it's hard to read into, but I think he has the confidence and the champion pool to pick picks that are sometimes unconventional in necessary situations, and in sense that is like a clutch factor, you know? And I feel like that's another reason why I think he's the best jungler in the world. He's just a GOAT jungler. I think there's this guy is so insanely good. It's crazy. Why not rate? Yeah, listen, I haven't watched the minor regions. I don't want to get into any like minor region stuff. I don't know them well enough. If I had watched a region for the whole split, I would do it, but I'm not gonna do it. Anyway, Canyon best jungler in the world, hands down. And my other strong opinion that maybe some people will disagree with, I think Tian is maximum B tier. I actually might put him like lowest of B tier. Listen, I am a Tian hater. I personally am. I've watched Tian for years, and I have seen him at every international. He always has a problem. Domestically, he's good. Like, he's a good player, and he is a strong jungler. And when Tian's on the ball and he's feeling it, he is like a proper good jungler, you know? But the amount of games, like Tian, I feel like, can sometimes just lose the game too quickly, too suddenly, and too easily for your team. And he is just a liability, you know? And I know he's a world champion, and you can say, Caedrel, he's a world champion. How is he underperforming? And I know Dom is a huge fan of Tian, and he loves Tian, and he calls him the GOAT. Listen, Dom, just like you're the shy hater, I'm a Tian hater. I'm putting him in fucking B tier. I don't give a shit. Like, I don't think Tian's that good. I think he's a strong jungler. He's average, and, well, not average. He's got high highs, but his low lows are the lowest lows of every jungler this tournament, and he's disgusting. And some of these, he not only, like, there are junglers who can run the game down and like path badly and get caught on crab and die. And then there are junglers who suck their team in to say, if I don't get this buff, I'm out of the game. And when they do that and his whole team dies for it, that motherfucker gets banned. And I feel like Tian does that. That's Tian. So those are my two strong opinions. As much as the first one might be normal, I feel like this one, maybe people will hate me for that one. Actually, also, by the way, Tian, quick thing before I move to owner. Tian, you're a fucking Viego merchant. I'm just going to say it. You were a Viego merchant all of last year. Was it last year this motherfucker was a Diego merchant, or was it season 12? Season 12. This motherfucker, absolute merchant in season 12, and he's bringing it back. I can see him slowly bringing this. This Viego game was like one of his best games I've seen. Crazy. Almost carried the game by himself. All right, let's go owner. Owner, I'm going to put him solid, like super good A tier. I had problems with owner over the last few years. I think this split he's been decent. The problem with owner is the rel nerfs are going to hurt. They're going to hurt. And people will watch owner this split and be like, wow, his Lee Sin's not that good. His Lee Sin's insanely good. His Lee Sin's his most played all time. And I think some of these games, I'm not going to give the context. I can't remember all off the top of my head. But I don't think you can look at this stat and say owner's a bad Lee Sin. I don't think owner has champion pool issues. I think I'm biased towards a Damwon player because Canyon is also a rel merchant. What do you mean I'm biased towards a Damwon player? He's on Gen G. What? Because he was on Damwon before? I think the rel of Canyon probably has most played rel as well. Sure, I won't disagree that. Most played rel. I mean, his finals rel was also insanely good, even though they lost. I remember, was it rel? He played rel in one of the games. Maybe it was this one, the Damwon series I'm thinking of. Something's in my head. And he was completely cracking heads on it. Oh, it was the Damwon series when I was screaming ban rel, right? And they like first picked it. He's a rel merchant too, but I don't think he'll be as affected as Canyon would be. Think about last MSI, you know, when owner was trying to play things like Kazakhs and Kindred himself. He just looked like he was struggling like a shit ton. And I feel like T1's meta read was slightly off. I feel like T1 as a team, if the meta is... Can you play every champ? Yeah, what did I say? If you look at T1 as a team last year at MSI, the meta wasn't great for them. They got sucked into meta reads like the Nautilus and the Kindred and the Kazakhs playstyle. It didn't work for them. But then you get to Worlds, you look at the meta for Worlds, and I think it was basically perfect for them. I also think Worlds 2022 meta was perfect for them because I feel like Keria is quite a reliant player when it comes to meta. So that's just T1 as a team. Personally, I think Canyon's best jungler in the world. I'll put owner in A tier. I think that... Wait, isn't the rel nerfs just hurting every jungler? Like you can argue that... Like, Yike, Rel Merchant, doesn't play it. I don't think Razork plays it much either. I've seen him play a couple times. Yeah, Umti's not a Rel Merchant. Some junglers had a volley bear fetish this split, and Razork was one of them, and was one of them. Razork and were the volley bear merchants. But yeah, I think owner's a solid jungler. I had problems with him when it came to playing around bot side. But yeah, Canyon gapped him pretty hard in that finals. Owner got caught here and there completely randomly. And Owner is just like really good, you know? I don't know. I feel like some T1 players turn it on when it comes to internationals. And the two players on T1 who turn it on in internationals are Faker and Owner. Listen, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of my opinion of the T1 players, okay? And you can agree or disagree, okay? Zeus is in his the Shy arc. Faker and Owner step it up like shit at internationals. Keria is a montage maker against lower teams, which makes people think that he's better than he is sometimes because he picks random picks against bottom tier teams that are really unconventional, but never plays them against the top tier teams, so he gets overinflated as to how good he is. But if the meta fits him perfectly well when it comes to ranged support meta, he is a really strong player, and he's probably one of the best ranged supports in the world. But Keria has this thing where he plays like Caitlyn support and Varus support and Ezreal support, and everyone's like, wow, his champion pool's so good. And then he gets to the international, and obviously he's not going to play them. He was just playing them against a bottom tier team, so everyone gets a bit too overhyped. Gumayusi is like he tanks everything. When the team's fucking running it, Gumayusi tanks it all. Gumayushi's like the last line of defense, and he is also a clutch player. So Gumayusi to me is like the most solid player on that roster. Gumayusi is really good. Like I said, if the meta suits Keria well, he is insane. Yeah, I feel like sometimes he gets a little bit, I don't want to say overrated, but people lose their minds a bit too much, including myself, when he plays random shit and then he never plays against top teams. And if he's against a bottom tier team, he'll pick some random shit and make fun of them. All right, Razork. I think Razork's winter was really good. I think his spring was all right. I think Fnatic as a team kind of struggled a little bit. Fnatic as a team was kind of all over the place. I think Razork's still really good. I'm a big fan of Razork. I do think his winter was better, but I'm a huge fan of Razork. I think he's really good. I'm going to put him in A tier, maybe even above TN. Honestly, maybe I'm shitting on TN too much. And people don't... the last thing I want is people to say that I'm rating these Fnatic players because I'm on Fnatic. I'm not. I put Oscar as the worst top laner in the tournament from major regions. And this has got nothing to do with being part of Fnatic or anything like that. I think Razork was the first All-Pro. Was he first All-Pro for winter? I think he definitely deserved it. Razork, insanely good jungler. The problem is, it's hard. How do I describe this? You can look good as a jungler when your team is struggling, but it's hard to look like the best jungler when your team's struggling, right? And I think that applies to many roles. For example, top lane, I guess you can argue it a little bit differently when top's always gapping every game and your team's still losing. But Fnatic as a team struggled a lot. Razork seemed like a pretty decent player through most of their series. A couple of the series he did run it down a bit, and that's why I don't want to put him in A tier. I feel like if you cut out some of those best of threes, like their BDS one, where he was playing Maokai, or not best of three, best of five. Yeah, those first two games against BDS. How is Fnatic even here is sometimes a question I ask myself. Like, they even reverse swept their way to get here. That's why I think rating some of these Fnatic players is weird, because they shouldn't even be here. BDS should be here. It's crazy that they're here. But I'm putting Razork over TN. I think Razork over TN might be the new meme of the year, you know? Last year it was Keria over Mickey X over Keria. I'm going to go ahead and put Razork over TN. I'm going with some crazy takes every now and then. You can call me high as fuck, and I know maybe Dom's going to see this, and he's going to call me up on Discord, and he's going to probably ask me to sit for an hour with him and tell me why TN is this low. Listen, I think TN is too inconsistent. There's inconsistent, and then there's TN, and he's disgusting sometimes. Or I'm going to say, someone's going to look at this and say I'm on hard drugs. You know what? Pass me the Zaza. Listen, I'm not about that life. I've seen too many fucking pussy-ass tier lists where it's like T1 is B tier because they came second. Gen.G is S tier because they came first. T is A tier because they came second. BLG is S tier. I'm not about that life. I'm not putting TN in fucking A tier with Owner and fucking shooting it. I'm not doing that dog shit. He's trash, and he's going to expose at MSI and internationals, and Razork's better. Well, what do you want from me, man? I can give you a tier list and say winners are winning and second places are second place and third place are third place, but that's personally what I think. I actually think that. And it's not just for content. I actually think he's not that good. Maybe I'm a TN hater. I don't know why. Yike's a controversial jungler sometimes because people are like, Yike this, Yike that, Yike this, Yike that. He's on a winning team. It's hard to rate him. He's on a losing team. It's hard to rate it. I don't know. I feel like Yike is the guy that gets the least credit on G2 because everyone always argues when he plays well that Yike has good teammates, so it doesn't count. And that shit I hate. I think Yike's the best jungler in EU. I think he's gotten so good now. You can't call him a rook anymore. I feel like Yike has had players and coaching staff around him where he can sponge up as much information as possible. You know, for example, the lane swaps. You know, Yike probably had no idea what he was doing in the lane swaps. He even tweeted he had no idea. But he still ran with it, you know. Yike is the perfect player for G2 because he will run with it, you know. When shit hits the fan, things go derailing, and, you know, fucking random picks are coming out, he'll run with it. And I feel like Yike has got the mechanics to run with it and play with it. So I'm a big fan of Yike. I do think that, okay, my only argument with Yike, my counter argument for Yike is I think if Yike wasn't on G2, now this is going to sound very weird, right? If Yike wasn't on G2 and he was on a mid to bottom tier team, Yike would not look good. And I'll describe why. Yike, I think there's two types of junglers, right? And you can complete them both to be a good jungler. Yike is a very good mechanical jungler and he's very creative, but that needs guidance and direction. And there are junglers who are not so creative, but they can give guidance and direction. And those junglers are strong on bottom tier teams because they have a set playstyle and sometimes it works, okay? Whereas I think if you put Yike on a bottom tier team in the LEC, he would struggle. If you put Razork on a bottom tier team in the LEC, I think he'd be fine. But Yike needs people around him with experience and like direction and leadership. And then he needs the space to be able to pop the fuck off, you know? And I think Yike is an insanely good jungler. He just lacks that quality. So you can easily argue that Yike on a bottom tier team would kind of suck. But I think on G2 he fits so perfectly that he's a really strong jungler. We've seen Razork on a bottom tier team. He's not good. That take is trash. He was on Misfits and almost went to Worlds with them with like 4 rookies. That's a dog shit take. And I think you're wrong. He was on Misfits. He was contesting the top of the table in regular seasons. And in Season 10 or Season 11, they almost went to Worlds if they won that last game best of 5. Look at his roster. Herit just came over from Korea. Vito was a rookie. And Kobe, Vander was about to retire. And so was Kobe. They were 2 veterans, right? This was classed as a bottom tier team. And they almost won the split. So, well, not the split. They almost went to Worlds, sorry. Not 4 rookies, my bad. I was thinking of a different Misfits lineup. So yeah, I think that's my take on Yike. Umti. I think Umti's a really good jungler. I think he's super solid. I feel like TL, the thing is, Umti won't sit there and outpath you. Umti's not the kind of guy to pick a carry jungler and go. I feel like this is the different style between Umti and Inspired, you know? Umti's not that kind of guy to go fucking, you know, vegan jungle mode and just power farm, you know? He's the kind of guy to just spam gank, and you could see it on Bro last year. When he was on Bro with the gang, fucking Morgan and Henna and shit, and effort, Umti was the leader. And Umti was just that guy who just dropped every camp and ganked everyone. And he would never pick any farming junglers. He would just pick Sejuani, Maokai, Xin Zhao, and just spam gank. And he's a jungler who I'm talking about. He's a leader. You know, I will do this, and I will stabilize lanes, and I won't play for myself. Whereas Inspired is the opposite. You know, Inspired plays for himself a bit more. Umti plays for lane. And it can look really bad, you know. There was games in the LCK where Umti played on the Bro roster where he would attempt plays. And as a jungler, right? How do I describe this? You're both junglers are even at the start because if you just keep full clearing, you'll both be even, right? And what happens with Umti, right, is he'll drop camps and he'll slowly bleed, but he'll keep the game stable. But it's only until he makes a play that then makes it so he dies and enemy jungler can take his camps that he just falls off a cliff, right? So Umti is the epitome of take my camps, I'm just going in as a tank. And I think, again, subjective, I love that playstyle. I think that's great playstyle. Obviously, it doesn't have flexibility, but I feel like it's reliable. And I feel like that's what the Team Liquid roster is. It's just the baseline reliability. So I would slot him in to B tier somewhere. I think he's decent. He's good. I like him. Where would I put him? I would put him on the same level as Razork, I think. Around about. I know a lot of Bro fans want him here, but I think he's really good. It's funny to me. It's weird to me that he comes from LCK, where he finishes 10th place for like 2-3 years in a row, joins the LCS and wins the split. I think that's just... That's no flame, by the way. I think that's poetry, you know? B for Bro, 10th place, comes in and wins the split. Yeah, but Umti over TN does sound kind of fucked up, actually. I'll put him below TN. Okay, I am a TN hater, but that is fucked up. I can't put TN, I can't put Umti above TN. I can't do that. Solid, good jungler. Will play to keep lane stable. Will go in, will tank, you know? That's his role. He's a stabilizer. Pretty good. I feel like it's too egregious for me to put TN below Umti as a second place LPL jungler versus like... this is why I hate tier lists, because it's like, wow, look at that gap between these players. That must mean they're much worse, right? It's like, no, they're all pretty good, you know? I don't like this idea of order. I just think they're all solid. And the only reason I say TN is solid is because everyone thinks he's really good, and I'm a hater. All right, Inspired. I don't know how to rate Inspired, man. He's going to slot in B tier as well. I feel like it's going to look something like this, you know? But I'm not a fan of his playstyle. No, I can't put him here. Chat, I can't do that. So I feel like, okay, so the thing with Inspired is I feel like Inspired's playstyle aside, you know, he's got his playstyle, he's got his thing. The way analysts view Inspired is they're very, what's the word when you're like opposite ends of something, you know? You have like extreme takes for both sides of Inspired, you know? Some analysts love Inspired because they're like, wow, polarized, that's it. They're like, wow, he farms a lot. Like he's like such a good carry jungler. You know, his mechanics are really good. I know, I agree. And his pathing's really good. And you can see it like when he was on Rogue, for example. You know, they would be losing, but Inspired would never really be the problem. Because he'd always be pretty strong, you know? Like in like Season 12 or something. Not Season 12. When was it he was on Rogue? Season 11, Season 10. And then when he was on EG, you know, he's farming, he's strong. and he never looks like the problem. But I guess that playstyle does have a little bit of like selfishness to it, you know, and Inspired is quite, I don't think it's a secret that Inspired's quite a toxic person, you know. No, like, I've never worked with him. This is just from hearsay, you know. I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but he's quite a bit of a tilter, you know. He gets a bit triggered at his teammates or something. What do you mean drama? People have said this. People have said this. You can't doubt that when he was in Europe, he was one of the best junglers in Europe, 100%. I guess a better way to word it is, to most people, he's toxic, because I feel like there's players in EU who just speak their mind, you know? And sometimes they speak their mind in a way that comes across as aggressive, you know? He'll come after a scrim and his mid laner will int it and he'll be like, you fucking ran it down. And the mid laner can be like, oh shit, that's toxic. And to the community, that's toxic. But to be honest, what he's trying to do is just basically say what he's thinking. And I've been there. I've played with players before who are like, you're fucking inting, stop fucking inting, don't do that again, don't pick this champ again. And it's like, whoa. But if you kind of just read into what they're saying, they're just speaking their mind without a filter, instead of saying something like, you know, I didn't really like your performance on that game, you know, I don't really like the way you play that champ, you know, can we look for something else? He's a bit different. But again, I think he's got a very polarizing style to what has. I think he's a really solid jungler. Analysts could, you know, suck him off a bit and say he's A tier. He's so fucking good. I love his pathing. He's really good. I think he's in between the EU boys. I think he's really good. He's a good jungler. I think he's really good. He's a good jungler. He's got a good carry style. He plays for team pretty well when he needs to. He can play tanks. I feel like there's a notion that like only a carry player. But bro, I feel like I fucked this tier list a bit. TN, man, I'm sorry. Am I really fucking TN this hard? Am I really putting TN below Inspired and Razork? Yo, TN, listen. Again, below Yike, I see it. No, I fucked this tier list a bit, chat. Like I said, I'm doing this live. I was going to do this off stream. And I think I fucked TN a bit here in this tier list. Listen, I'm a TN hater. Okay, I'll be a bit more respectful, okay? Because I don't hate TN as a like, it looks like I have some vendetta against him to put him as the second worst jungler in the tournament, doesn't it? From major regions. I'll put TN between Yike and Razork. That looks a little bit better. And you can say, oh, Caedrel, you're backtracking. I'm not. This is all done live. I was gonna do this pre-recorded. I don't know where to put Inspired. I don't think he's better than Razork. But I also don't think he's. I think Umti's being done dirty. I'm not putting him in C tier, chat. Fuck it, I'm gonna put him here. I think when Inspired's locked in, he's a good carry player. I don't think any jungler is a C tier. Like, it's similar to top lane. I don't think there's any bad top laners when it comes to the, you know, for example, the top 4 LPL LCK. All the top laners are sending are basically all S tier, you know. But Umti's being done dirty here somehow. Nah, I think someone has to be done dirty. If Razork's last, that's fucking criminal. If Tian's last, that's criminal. Inspired is, in isolation, a strong jungler. He's got really good carry performance on carry champs, and Rel's out of the meta, I guess. I don't know if that helps him. I don't think he plays Rel at all. I think MSI meta is gonna be like probably Xin Zhao, Lee Sin, Poppy, Viego, Sejuani, and Vi. And I mean, Shun will play Kindred. Shun loves his Kindred. Maybe a bit of Jarvan as well, depending on bot meta. I feel like this tier list is hard, isn't it? This bottom half of the jungle is really difficult. The problem is no one else has done tier lists, so I guess I'm the first one taking the bullet of the screenshot and being on drugs. I don't know. Someone's being done dirty here, and I don't know who it is, chat. I don't know who it is. We'll talk about Shun in a sec, but listen, I'm just gonna leave it like that. I'm gonna leave it like that. I feel like this is fair enough. This is as fair as I get it. I don't think Inspired's the worst jungler in the tournament. I think Umti is a really solid baseline jungler, very kind of one-dimensional Volibear / tank. I'll make sure lanes are stable. And the problem is it makes it look like that's a bad style and is a bad player. But yeah, I think Umti's good. Umti's good. I feel like there's no jungler on this list that's bad. I don't think any jungler is bad at all, obviously. It's top 2 from each region. That's why the problem is, this is why tier lists are hard for tournaments like MSI, because you have 8 players instead of, what is it with Worlds? You have, I don't know, like 20 or something per role. So when you do a tier list, what are you going to say? The first and second seed from major regions, there's a bad player on it because they're in a lower tier. You know, that's why it's horrible to do this. You know, if there was a 3rd seed and a 4th seed, it's much easier to put people down here. That's why I think tier lists are quite difficult for MSI, and I feel like it's difficult to isolate people out. Anyway, I think I'm happy with that. I'll touch on Shun real quick. I don't think it's any surprise Shun that to people that Shun's in S tier. I mean, Shun is like the second most complete jungler in the league. I think he does have a little bit of that creativity to him, where he has champs that he, for example, like the Kindred champ that he plays. I mean, what was in the finals? He had like 6 stacks in fucking 10 minutes or something. But one thing that I broke down with Shun and did a lot of analysis on him last year was him and On, I think, are if you included supports and you did jungle support tier lists, I think the best jungle support in the world right now is Shun and On. I think they are the timers they have to team up on invades to play for Shun is insane. I wish I could give you examples, but you know, for example, Canyon Lehens I don't think is as strong because Canyon to me is much more of a mid playthrough player and a topside playthrough. But Shun and On, I mean, there's examples probably you can find throughout the whole year where they'll base same time and they'll always heal. For example, enemy Raptor respawn on blue side. I can remember a game where he's playing Xin Zhao and On's playing Rakan, I think, or something. They'll always team up perfectly to get Shun resources without dropping the map. And I don't know if it's Shun calling that or not, but that's one of the attributes that I really like about Shun. One of the attributes I really like about Shun. And that's what I think he's really good at. Also, I think Shun, On, and Elk are the best 3-core in the world. Their bot play is incredible. Shun's timers for bot dives are second to none. His min-max of camps before bot dives begin are crazy. And I think you'll hear a lot of people say that. All right, I think jungle's pretty safe, pretty fair. I think this, I'm interested to see what other people's tier lists are around these three. I feel like a very baseline standard tier list, what people could have is just this, right? They might do something like that, or they might do something like that, or they might do something like that. I feel like all of this is very easy for people to do. I guess the only hot take I have is Tian. I'm a Tian hater. Nothing personal, kid. All right, mid lane. Let's start off by saying Chovy's the best player in the world. He is the epitome of everything that is correct and right and the best about mid lane, whether it's any attribute you wanna break down about Chovy. The problem with Chovy that he had before was he was a bit too selfish, didn't roam as much, wasn't a very big map player. Now he's much more of a map player. His team fights are impeccable. His mechanics are the best in the world. Some of the best in the world. His farming is some of the best in the world. Will he choke is the question. Will he have another international where he doesn't show up? Because every year we say this. Chovy is one of the best players in the world. Chovy is one of the best players in the world. And domestically, he runs the LCK. He is on another level. There's like a Chovy tier in my head. Will he run it down? Well, not run it down, I guess. It's more like he doesn't actually run it down and choke. He kind of becomes invisible, you know? And that's why these tier lists are difficult. Because, for example, this is what I'm probably going to do on paper, right? And say these two are the best mids in the world and Faker's just behind them. But the counter argument is Faker shows up in internationals and these two don't. And that counter argument is so strong that it makes it so hard to defend the idea that these are better players, you know? And that's why this tier list is such a weird one. Because there's one player on this list that has intangibles and that can't sometimes be measured, you know, when Faker will just do something random at an international or he'll show up. But Faker's last MSI wasn't that great. Anyway, let's carry on with Chovy. Anyway, we all know Chovy's best player in the world. I will make you a deal, chat. Here's the deal. Here's the deal. Here's the deal. Because I said Chovy was also insanely good last year. If Chovy doesn't at least come second at this MSI, I am done with Gen G forever. I will never, ever, ever rate them domestically ever again. This is the last time I'll ever rate them domestically, ever. Gen G don't come top 2 at this tournament, and they lose to T1, or they lose to Top Esports, or G2, or whatever it is. When it comes to Worlds, I don't care if they're 18-0 regular season, undefeated playoffs, they're not going in S tier. It's not happening. You said that last year. No, I said that last year for Doran. I said if Doran doesn't show up at this Worlds, because this is one of his best domestic years ever, then I'm done. And Doran fucking ran it. So that is done. I even signed a waiver with Yamato that said I will never doubt Doran again. I'm fucking done. Because he did really well in their domestic finals. And I was already hating on him. All right, Chovy and Knight, 2 best mids, I think, easy. If you look at Knight's finals, you can argue Knight was not that good in the finals. But I've said this before, he played Azir like 2 games because they would there. What happened in the finals was Top Esports banned Ari from Knight, so he couldn't get it because it's one of his one tricks. Cream had a small champion pool, so what Knight did was he took Azir 1-2 every game, so he could deny Cream's champ pool because he's an Azir Ari main, and then Cream had to play Hui and Talia, and it's not really his comfort. The games that he did get Ari and the games that he did get Azir, he was strong. Anything other than that, he was pretty useless. So you can't look at Knight's finals and say he was bad. He was playing for the team and basically trying to shut down what Cream could provide to his team. Knight's easily the best mid in the LPL. And yeah, him and Chovy are top of the tier. But what I'm going to do is, I changed my mind. I'm going to put Faker in S tier as well. Because I think Faker, if you contextualize his whole year so far, Faker's lane phase was the best lane phase I've seen from him all year long, for many years. I don't care about what those stats say, +6. I don't give a fuck. Orianna was permanently banned against Faker every single game. I'm going to look at T1 and I'm going to look at most banned against T1. And I bet you, yeah, Orianna, 69% of the game time, they perm-banned it. Keria obviously perm-banned Ashe. Orianna was perm-banned against him. And you can always use the argument that Faker is going to show up in internationals. Did he have a bad finals? He choked game 5. He did. There was an instance in game 5 where Faker actually lost the game for his team, which is very unconventional in Faker. He ran that game 5 down quite hard with the Herald and cost his team a lot of tempo on the map. It's one death and it's one mistake, but it's a costly mistake. It was a big mistake by Faker. The fact that he did this, I was mega surprised, but yeah, sometimes you just kind of sleep a little bit, don't you? And like right now, you're down 2k, you're heralding mid for Drake. The problem is, this is such an important death, right? Because it's Drake spawn, it's third Drake spawning, and T1 have control of the river. It's only a 2k disadvantage. It's fine. They have mid wave, Herald crashes, and they have a team fight right there, right? They have a team fight for Drake, and that's their time to come back. But obviously what Faker does is he heralds in, gets Poppy W'd into their tower and dies, and then they have no chance of a fight. And then they're against an Infernal Soul point Genji, and the game's just become incredibly hard. He misplayed that really hard. Very unconventional of him. I think he's had a really solid year overall, though. He's had games where he's hiccuped here and there. Like, obviously, that game, his lane phase that game also was not that good. I think if you actually... I can put the camera... Wait, hold up. If you look at that lane phase in isolation, you can say that, you know, Faker's like an A tier mid. But I'm not going to look at that lane phase in isolation. I think there's a point where the camera sits mid for at least a solid minute, and you watch Faker laning versus Chovy, and this motherfucker is not landing a single spell. And he lost lane versus Corki, which was obviously not ideal. Yeah, it's here. Look at this lane phase. Like, I remember watching this and thinking to myself, like, what is Faker doing? So they've both just TP back. I'm just going to use this example. And Chovy, the amount of Qs that Faker throws out at him and the amount that don't land... The way this matchup works is Orianna outranges Corki, and then Orianna pushes in Corki and pokes him on the tower. But Chovy somehow had wave control, and this wave slow pushing into Faker, and he can't poke him from stopping to crash the wave because he's just missing everything. And obviously, this is the kind of lane phase where you sit there and you're like, Faker, what are you doing? So if people want a counter argument, you know, Faker's lane phase was weak, la 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 la. Sure, counter argument it, I don't care. I think he's had some of the best laning of his life all year long. But he just kept missing everything. Like, it's just a montage of Faker missing Qs, right? So he could never really punish the Corki and chunk him out. Corki was dodging everything. And then, and so, you know, Corki eventually got first blood, got red buff, and now he's got health regen, and now it's kind of hard for Orianna to push him out of this lane. There's the first one that landed. So, if you want to be a finals Andy, you can say Faker's A tier. But yeah, I think Faker will show up at this tournament. He always does, and yeah, don't get caught out by one game, because I feel like a lot of fans have goldfish memory in a sense sometimes. Not all of them, right? But some people, like, they'll say this player sucks. He'll play one game of a finals that is insanely good, and they're like, he's the GOAT, or vice versa. You know, they'll play good all regular season. They'll have a finals game where they play bad here or there, and then they're like, nice dog shit, and it's like, well, recency bias is quite powerful. All right, Cream. A lot of people, for some reason, don't rate Cream so highly. I think Cream's a really good player. I think he was good in OMG. He's had his moments. Everyone has their moments. You know, Cream last year, OMG, lost the game on Kai'Sa. Everyone remembers that. He has a small champion pool. He will probably get exposed at an international for that champion pool, but he's a really good player. His Akali win rate is pretty trash last year, but he's probably one of the best Akalis in the world. He's probably one of the better melee champ players in the world next to Zeka. His Azir is solid. BLG's whole plan in the finals was just to shut down Cream. Ahri ban, denial pick of Azir after game 1, and it seemed to work pretty strongly against him. And yeah, he looked a little bit dizzy off his champs, but he's got a certain few champs he's good at. You know, Akali, Ahri, Azir, Tristana is not bad. Like he's got a solid pool. Not the best though for an international. So I think if anyone's gonna expose him, it's through his champ pool. But I feel like he's got champs to rely on, like Yone and shit, when he comes back to it. But I think a lot of people will be surprised. His lane phase is pretty strong. His team fight's good. He's quite reliable. Is it his first international, chat? 20 years old. Yeah, first international. Yeah. Maybe he shits the bed. I doubt it, though. He's got fucking 369 on his team and Mako, so, I mean, just listen to them and shut the fuck up. Yeah, Cream, I think will be the most underrated player at the tournament because no one's ever heard of him. Humanoid, honestly, Humanoid has the most degenerate plays sometimes. He has the most degenerate plays. Like, he will, like, that already on Soul Series against Nuke, just getting solo killed by Orianna, or Azir, sorry, level 3. Some of the team fights were disgusting, but Humanoid somehow is always really strong. And he always pushes side lanes. His Azir is good, but he just has these really stupid moments, you know? He has games where he'll single-handedly carry the game, but he'll have stupid moments that'll cost you a lot. And those stupid moments come from the lane phase. He'll do really, really silly things in the lane, like getting solo killed on Azir, I think it was a few times against... I don't know if it was this game or this game where he just gets solo killed by Caps or Nuke. Listen, I think he's got a lot of good qualities, but my only argument for Humanoid and putting him in B tier is I think Humanoid's biggest flaw is most exposable in an international. Now, what I mean by that, getting solo killed by Nuke, level 3 or 4 on Arena Soul, as an example, doesn't matter much because I don't think much is going to happen. Getting solo killed by Chovy or Knight, level 3 or 4, is going to be a whole different game. And that game is going to be disgustingly unplayable. Because the way teams, the best teams in the world, punish you for mistakes is absurdly strong. And I'm scared for Humanoid. But Humanoid has had highs where at internationals he plays really, really well. He is like the best player on his team most times at internationals. So I'm giving him a little bit of leeway. I would put him here, but I'm giving him a little bit of room to be like, you know what? His last internationals were insanely good. He's been the best mid at some internationals, even better than Caps. And this year, he's been overall pretty good. He just has those slip-ups, and those slip-ups can cost him the whole game. His whole game, I guess, more relative. No? Yeah, Worlds 22, Humanoid was better than Caps. Deal with it. So yeah, Humanoid International seems always pretty reliable and quite strong. He's like leaning between these two for me, but I'm going to put him in B. Caps, obviously the best Western mid. I would put Caps above Cream, personally. I think Caps he's got more experience, he's got more champion pool, he's got a few qualities that comes with playing the game for more time. I think Caps is the best player that Europe is sending to this international. I think Caps is the best player that the West is sending to this international, and is the player that stands the most chance against the Eastern players, right? And he is the bastion and beacon of hope, basically, for Europe and the West in terms of international success. Sometimes you can look at Caps and say he's craps and has a bad split. I think Caps' split, this split has been really good. I don't have anything egregiously wrong with the way Caps plays the game. The problem is, if you look at Caps versus Chovy lane phase when he was playing, when the fuck was it? Was it the Lissandra game? I don't know when it was and shit like that, where he's just getting solo killed. And, you know, was it at MSI? I think it was, right? Like this series, Gen G G2 was painful. This was painful. The last time Caps played against Chovy, or I don't know if that was the last time, it was painful to watch. It was really painful. Like, just what are you doing, Caps? What are you doing? Like, what are we doing? Honestly, it was something to forget. But that was a year ago. Caps, I think now is pretty strong player this year. Yeah, I think Caps is definitely the creme of the crop of what the Europe is sending. So yeah, I also love Caps' creativity. I feel like he does have that creativity to him. You know, intangible sometimes. Yeah, Caps runs the region. I also think, like, the last thing I'll say about Caps, gameplay-wise aside, if you look at his history, you know, I feel like it's hard to argue and doubt him. I mean, look at this from ever since he joined. First. I mean, fourth once. He is like the epitome of like European international success, right? So he is the core of it all. All right, the NA mids. Listen, I think Jensen's lane phase is atrocious. I'm just going to say it. His lane phase to me, every time I watch, obviously, I'm not a huge LCS expert. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to preface this by saying I haven't watched every LCS game. However, to me, as an analyst, I think lane phase is really important. The series that I saw from Jensen's lane phase, I was not a fan. And that for me already stings a lot. And when I say his lane phase is bad, right, I mean relative to the domestic players, right? When I come up against people like this, it gets even worse. I think his snappy decision-making as well. I think him and Inspired are a little bit... Inspired sees plays, goes for them. Yeah, desynced maybe. Inspired sees plays, goes for them, and Jensen doubts sometimes, or like maybe it's a little bit late, and then the play is dead, and then Inspired looks like a fucking griefer. For example, I don't know. I know Jojo didn't get a single kill in their series against FlyQuest, but I also don't think Jensen's lane phase was like egregiously good in the matchups that he had, you know? I hate this Karma pick. I'm not going to be a huge hater. Like, don't get me wrong, Jensen, to be honest, in my eyes, is probably next to, maybe you could argue, like CoreJ, the most successful player from NA, you know? You can't say Bjergsen, you can't say Double Lift. I think Jensen is that guy. Like, Jensen is Captain America. Just fucking deal with it. He is. I'm sure at an international, he'll be fine. Like, I don't think he'll have... Okay, from the LCS, like, Jensen is that guy. He fucks, you know? Like, you doubt Jensen, he fucking pulls it off somehow. You can say he's not from NA, la la la, whatever. But Jensen is the most successful player LCS has ever had internationally. I think that wealth of experience, you know, and like just being a bit reliable will help the team a lot. I just don't think his individual caliber hits any of these players in my eyes. I just don't think it does. Impact? Yeah, but Impact's international success came from the LCK. You can't just be like, well, CoreJJ, like he won Worlds. Well, he didn't win Worlds for NA, did he? Sneaky? I mean, yeah, Sneaky's a classic, but he's not yet tournament, is he? Also, Sneaky's been out for a long time. Jensen always makes the internationals. I don't know. I don't have many other real points about Jensen. I've just not been impressed with his recent best of fives, and maybe I have recency bias in my mind, and maybe someone's tier list he's going to be like in B tier. You know, his regular season was really good from lane phase and stuff, but I will tell you my judgment based on what I've seen, and I think he's a C tier mid. Jensen has 0 international trophies. Bjergsen has 1. My guy, IEM fucking Katowice 2015 doesn't count. They played against WE. All right, Appa, Yappa. Listen, Appa, before I rate you, listen, I don't know if you're watching this, but I hope you listen to this. Name change. Don't call yourself APA. Appa is much cooler. Listen, Appa, you got so many memes from that. Appa, Yappa, Appa, Yip, Yip. Bro, don't call yourself APA. Appa is clean as hell. Rename that shit ASAP. The thing with Appa is, you know who Appa reminds me of? He reminds me of Malrang, you know, and I've said this on stream before. You know how Malrang came to Europe and every jungler in Europe was like, yeah, his style's kind of coin flip. He's going to be easily abusable. When teams learn his style of just spam ganking and they stop dying to all these ganks, Malrang's going to be a bad jungler. 7 months later, he wins Summer Split and goes to Worlds as the first seed. And Appa's the same. Everyone's like, yeah, Appa's champion pool is so small. He only plays Ziggs and Aurelion Sol and Talia. If you just figure out a way to abuse his champion pool, he's going to be useless. But no one has. And no one figured out Malrang either. Everyone always says these things. And they were never, they talk the talk, but it never happens. And I get it. His champion pool is small. You know, he plays his champs. Yapped in America, bro. He locks him in. He looks like a bit of an intro and everything else. But, you know, he fucking finds the magic and he makes it work. And you know, the second that game ends and the Nexus is exploding, he leaves the stage and runs to the backstage. He fucking runs. I mean, obviously, everyone will credit his small champion pool. And to me, it works. Like I said, Team Liquid to me is like this big rock team. The problem I have with Appa is I think, again, Jensen and Appa, I think their lane phases are going to be really, really rough against some of these players. The good news, though, for Appa is I think a lot of his champs are cheating champs. Now, what I mean by that is they either cheat the wave or they cheat the move. So what I mean by that is like Ziggs can clear wave very easy without being punished heavily. Talia can cheat mid move and drop prio because she has a global. Aurelion Sol can cheat mid wave with, you know, pulling the wave with E and like farming for free. So I feel like he gets away with a lot that is hard to punish. You know, for example, Orianna versus Corki, a good example. Orianna needs to get mid push into Corki. It's a good matchup. Orianna should be first on the move. Corki can't cheat the prio. A lot of Appa's champs can kind of cheat a lot of things that you need to force, you know, in a winning lane. And that's kind of funny to me. And I feel like that's why he gets away with the champion pool a lot, you know. He can skip waves, skip lanes, clear waves, and get away with things that sometimes you just can't, you know, you can't punish. So yeah, I'm gonna put him. I'll put him in C tier next to Jensen. I think he's all right. He's overall like average to me and everything. And I do think he's gonna get blasted in lane phase by a lot of these players. His champion pool is quite small. Do I think it's abusable? No. The thing is, domestically, it's like, how do we deal with Appa's champion pool? Internationally, they're like, wait, why the fuck does this guy play Aurelion Sol and Ziggs or some shit, you know? Obviously, Aurelion Sol's meta now. You know, I feel like if you play Ziggs versus any of the players above him, he's probably just going to sit under his tower clearing waves. Yeah, I wish I could give you more info, but yeah, I think he's overall just kind of average everywhere across the board. I think that's a pretty solid mid-lane tier list. I think Cream slept on, Humanoid's all right. He's better than these two, I think. Maybe I'm EU biased, you know, maybe one of the NA people like, you know, for example, Dom might be like, Humanoid's a fucking Inter. And you know what? I can see it. I can see it. Humanoid has shown that he can go toe-to-toe with other internationals with these players above. I just don't think these two can. Jensen more so in times very past, but yeah. Yeah, maybe I feel like I don't have as much to say about the LCS players as I do others, because LCS, I think I watched about 60% of the league. The problem was the games went on so late that when I was watching the games, bro, my brain was off. The most surprising thing about Pace was when he joined the league, was he was breaking records as a rookie. You know, like most kills, all these pentakills, Jinx and Zeri. He was insane in his debut year. And especially considering he was replacing Ruler. Now things have kind of faded down a bit, you know, and the dust is settled and he looks all right. Regular season was good, don't get me wrong. But to me, Pace, I'm going to put him in A tier. I think he has shown all of last year that he's an S tier AD carrier on the world. But yeah, Pace this year, he's shown countless times in lane phase where he's just kind of dropped the ball. Overstepped, got punished quite easily. His team fighting, however, I still think his team fighting's pretty good. He is a bit of a hyper carry merchant in that sense, you know, Aphelios and Zeri, and I feel like what they tended to do was the way he works, I think sometimes pays, is if he loses a game or when a series drags on, he'll always default to Zeri and Aphelios, which is quite reliable. For some, you don't count last year. For some, you do. I think I count last year if the sample size is big enough, and I don't count last year if the sample size was quite small. For example, Caps ran MSI down last year. Will I count it? No. He had a fucking shit meta read. He was trying to play Nautilus mid, which also baited Faker, and he misplayed a game or two here in lane phase against Genji. However, if you look at Paze's last year, he will play Zeri and Aphelios every game when he needs to, play hyper carries, and he'll ask his support to lock in Lulu. And there's a handful of that shit. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like I discredit things that happened rarely, and I credit things that happen a lot. Anyway, Paze, yeah, overall, weaker point of Genji. I think Lehens is actually pretty good. I've seen, the only other tier list I've seen was Monocules, and Lehens was in B. I think Lehens is a solid player. The only thing that sucks sometimes with tier lists is you can't contextualize, like, for example, how vocal a player is, or how much they provide, or how much they're sacrificing so others can succeed in draft. Sometimes you can see it from the outside, but you can't see it sometimes. The whole story. Yeah, I think it's criminal to put Paze in B tier, or any lower. I think Paze has got insane mechanics, good team fighting, and he'll play a hyper carry. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And he'll play some of the best mechanics in the world, but, you know, he's just had a rough year. Rough relative to how good he was last year. I think that's fine. Elk and Gumayushi. I think these are the two best ADs. I'll do them together. Two best ADs. I put Elk as the best AD in the world. I put Gumayushi right behind him. I don't think a lot of people rate Gumayushi high enough, which might sound weird. I think Gumayushi is the best player on T1 personally. I think when T1 is winning, it's because of Gumayushi. I also think that the way T1 has been playing recently, I'll try and describe this as most possible. The way T1 has been playing recently, with Zeus playing these carry top style range tops, has hurt Gumayushi more to make him look worse than he currently is, and he's still performing very well. Zeus is playing, you know, TF top and Vayne top and all this stuff, and he needs more. I guess the best way to describe it simply is these picks need more resources. Whereas people like Keen will play Cassante and they'll play bot side. Zeus did play Zac a couple times in those game 5s. But instantly when you look at, for example, let's look at a couple of his games, right? Some of these games, he's playing with TF top, Vayne top. He's playing with all the shit that his role in the game is to int the game as least possible, I suppose, or play the weak side as best possible. And I feel like that is a pain point sometimes for measuring how good a player is, you know. I mean, I don't disagree with the way T1 plays, because I get it that you have one of the best carry tops in the world. Zeus definitely underperformed. But if you look at that game 5, it's funny to say this, but Gumayushi is probably the most reliable player as well on that T1 roster right now. Because if you look at that game 5 from a game POV, this is the most pressure T1's been under all year. Who's the one who's performing the best? It's Gumayushi. Why? Because if you contextualize what everyone's doing around him, Zeus got solo killed twice, Owners found nothing, Keria is obviously sitting with him, and Faker made the biggest mistake in mid ever to give them soul point. And everything's on Gumayushi. So you can look at the score and be like, wow, Gumayushi, this game he was 1 and 2, wow, seems like he did nothing. But if you contextualize the game state, the only reason that mid fight was even remotely close and T1 having a chance was because Gumayushi is so strong. The only reason they're at this point is because Gumayushi has held the game together in a fucking horrible game state and found a way to maybe like give them a small chance to win a finals in which his team made so many mistakes. So yeah, I mean, he has to play the fight perfectly to even have a chance, right? Yeah, I think Gumayushi's best player on T1. I think he's second best AD in the world. And I hope people don't underrate him by just contextualizing the numbers of what happened in the finals rather than actually what happened. Because he died here, the game's over. But yeah, the only reason the game was over was because he's smurfing. Yes, I'm not going to put... Actually, you know what? All right, I accidentally put my stream schedule there with Pedro. But we'll put Viper up here as well. We'll put him at the... I'm just going to leave him there, okay? I'm just going to leave him there on the right, okay? I'm not saying he's better than Gumayushi or anything like that, or Gumayushi's worse. I'm not going to rate him. I'm just going to put him in S tier and just leave him there, you know? Just as like a little spectator. I just want him to be there, you know? It's like inviting him to be like a sub for all these teams. Just let him sit there and just fucking watch. Jackie Love. Does Jackie Love go in S tier or A? Because some people are shitting on Jackie Love, but I think Jackie Love is so fucking good. I think that guy is so good. The problem is Jackie Love just has his degenerate moments, and the problem is he still has them. And I love his style. I think his style can be subjective sometimes. Some people are like, this guy plays too aggressive. I don't like the way he plays. And I'm sitting there like, Jackie, I fucking love it. And it's not purely on entertainment basis. I love the way he his playstyle can sometimes get in your head, you know? At the disrespect and level of confidence he plays with. And you can see it sometimes in some of their series where they'll leave open Kalista, let them first pick Kalista, just play fucking Draven into it, you know? Jackie doesn't give a fuck. I do think Jackie's mechanics are insanely good. He just has a unique style to him, you know? Where, you know, Elk will play aggressive, Gumayushi will play aggressive, Gumayushi has a really strong lane phase, reliable, you know, Pace is like this hyper carry. Like, you know, Jackie Love is gonna make sure that something's happening in a lane. He will, and the problem he has sometimes is when he makes things happen in that lane, he can sometimes lose the game for his team, right? Or not lose the game for his team, but he can lose the lane. I thought that finals was quite interesting, the way they picked Draven, right? You know, it was like, what did they first pick? They first picked Ashe, wanted to go Kalista Ashe. You could see the confidence from it, right? I think you can see the confidence from the draft of like, we first pick Ashe because Kalista and Varus are open. We'll pick the other AD. Then BLG catches them off guard with slamming Kalista Varus, which actually for some people, you know, maybe catches them off guard. Draven is locked in fucking instantly, bro. No hesitation. Just slam it. Happy to go that matchup. And obviously that matchup can be quite annoying. But the thing is, he will make shit happen, and he will play the lane as needs to be, and sometimes too aggressively, like this, for example. Like Jackie Love slams his Draven, it looks great. He's playing really aggressive. They go for something kind of greedy, and then you know, Jackie gets his kill and he'll die, and then you know Elk pushes out, and then he kind of lost a little bit of a lead, and then he'll keep doing the same thing where he'll just keep going in, and you know, for example, the early stages he'll just keep making it happen, keep fighting, and it looks good. You know, but sometimes it can really look disgusting, and they'll misplay it, and then Jackie dies on Draven and the game's lost, you know. But my main point is he will do what is necessary, and sometimes he will do what is necessary more than what is necessary, if that makes sense. I love Jackie. I think he's above pace. Yeah, Tian sold him that game. Yeah, Tian has Jackie has games where Tian kind of sells him. I'm sorry if I'm overrating him, but I think the two best players, Mako aside on top esports, are 369 and Jackie. He's got it all. He's got international experience, a world champion. He has insane mechanics. He's got incredibly aggressive picks. He can match lanes that people try and draft around to get the push into him in. His team fighting is over aggressive, and that's one of his pain points, and it has been for a long time. But to me, I like AD carries that'll go in and make it happen, and they will go for angles that people are afraid to go with. He won't even fucking flinch, and I think that's a quality that I respect a lot about him. All right, Hans Mama. The funny thing to me about G2 is I love it how they came into the start of the split. Hans Mama was playing, what was it? He was playing like a Philios, and then they dropped it instantly. And the reason they did that, I think, was because, you know, they were like, let's try and expand champion pools early season. Ah, fuck, I don't like Aphelios, I'm not that good at it. Let's go back to Kalista Draven and shit, and whatever we can do to win lane, which was quite funny. Hans Sama is a good player. Hans Sama is a really good player. I think the problem with G2 sometimes is Yike and Hans are the two people who get axed a lot. Or not axed, ignored, you know? I get it, he's playing Jinx. I get it, all he has to do is play team fights well. I get it, you know, he's fucking babysat, kind of carried through a little bit. And I get he does very silly things, like there was team fights at MSI where he should have flashed, and you know, he could have ended the game or something, and instead of chase it or whatever it was. I think he's overall pretty good and he's solid. I think he's a strong AD carry. His champion pool is decent. He doesn't really seem to struggle in any real metric other than team fighting sometimes. And that's a really detrimental metric to be a bit weak in sometimes. Especially when, how do I describe it, a lot of the game state is carried through for him. Obviously, Draven will be banned against him all the time. He's a good Draven. They have Kog'Maw Braum as well, which they might pull out. They played a lot of lane swaps G2 with Tristana and Jinx and shit, and they even lane swapped. I think they lane swapped Aphelios as well, didn't they, or something? He's not a bad player named Broad. I think he's like really high B tier, solid player, overall really good. I don't want to blow too much smoke up his ass because like G2, I think a lot of their success comes from Mickey and Caps personally. I think Mickey and Caps are the cores of G2 for me. Yike is like this mechanical maniac that follows through, and Hans Sama, he does his job really well. I think he's a very good baseline of AD carries at the international event. And this is the thing that I want to say. I just want to reiterate this again, because like I said with these tier lists, the annoying thing is I have to put people, you know, in B tier and C tier, and it looks bad relative, but there's only 8 players I have. You know, at Worlds, there's 16. And so B tier and C tier from 3rd and 4th seeds becomes a lot easier. I feel like it hurts me a bit to put them like this, but it is what it is. They're strong players. Hans Sama is a strong player. I'm also, my follow-up take here is I think Noah is in the same tier as Hans Sama. The reason I say that is because sometimes, to me, Hans Sama rarely has games, in my opinion, where the game is decided by him, you know? Whereas I feel like Noah is always in that situation where the game is lost or won by Noah. And when Fnatic wins games, it's because of Noah and Jun. And when Fnatic loses, it's because Noah and Jun didn't carry. And the pressure that Noah has is a lot higher. So it's much more noticeable when Noah underperforms because they lose. And it looks like he's the reason they lose. But he's the only reason they win as well. Whereas Hans Sama, if he's behind, you know, it's people look at Caps and look at Yike and they look at Mickey. And I feel like that means that Noah gets a lot more flack than he deserves. So I personally want to put Noah in B tier. I think they're on similar kind of levels, and Noah's mechanics are insanely good. Noah has really good, you know, in that game 5 versus BDS, he pulled out Ezreal, which I thought was really weird, especially Ezreal North lane. It proved me wrong. And the only reason the Fnatic's here is because of their bot lane. So yeah, I actually, maybe some people would put Noah in C tier. I think Noah's B tier to me. I think Hansama is still the better player, but I think they're quite close in skill level that I don't think there's a tier beside them, the both of them. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Noah. I think he's good. All right, Masu and Yeon. I think Masu is the worst AD at the tournament. And like I said, a lot of time when it comes to LCS players, I didn't watch the whole league. I guess the best way to do this is list, right? I didn't watch the whole league. So maybe I'm missing context on some of the regular season stuff. I think I watched most of the playoffs, almost all of them. To me, Masu lane phase with Busio is it's kind of bad. His lane phase is just really bad. They can't play Kalista lanes. They can't play Lucian. He basically just picks Varus, kind of just sits there. I don't wanna flame him. I'm not here to flame. I'm just saying, you know, he's a rookie. He's brand new. You know, give him time, let him cook. But yeah, I don't think there's much to say. I think this team is a heavy topside play. If they win, it's through topside. If they lose, it's because topside lost. I don't know. I personally was a bit of a Yeon hater last year. I thought Yeon and Appa on that TL roster were like the sole reason they were losing. You know, I thought if they had better carries, this team would be a lot stronger. And then when it coming into this year, people asked me, you know, they're getting Umti and Impact. Are they going to be stronger? La 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 la. I thought they were going to be trash, and I openly said, I think Appa and Yeon are just bad carries. And every time I watch these people on midwave, they just die. And it's like some basic fundamental mistakes are missing, some fundamentals missing, and they just look like unreliable liabilities. So I thought they'll be worse, and they proved me wrong. They won the split, and Yeon actually looked pretty damn good. His lane phase was strong. He wasn't getting caught out too much. Was he like this incredibly shining star? No, but I don't think he was ever too much of a liability as he was last year. Yeah, him and Core seem to be working well together, so I don't think I have any big problems with Yeon. I kind of wanted to do this, but I'm going to keep it like that. I do think Noah and Hansama are better, even though I'm saying that he's gotten better. Yeon, to me, last year, Yeon was like this, but I'm going to keep it like that. I feel like I'm quite EU biased, aren't I? Maybe I'm quite EU biased. I think there's a lot of arguments for Yeon's improvement, but NRG are EU's fathers. Suck my cock. We'll leave it at that. You put Impact over BB, you're not EU biased. Yeah, true, actually. Bro, I think Impact's so good. Impact is so good, I think.
Oh, God, here we go again. Mickey X over Carrier.
Let's start off with strong takes. I think Jun is fucking insane. I think he's the best player on Fnatic. I'm going to put him in A tier. I'm not going to put him in S, but I think Jun is one of the best supports of the tournament. I feel like the reason I'm doing Jun first is I think people might put Jun here or here because he's in Fnatic, and Fnatic are the second seed from Europe, and they came second place. And actually, you know, I'll put Elski and LPL first seed first, and LPL. No, I think Jun is insanely good. I actually saw Jun after they lost the finals. I saw him after they lost the finals, sitting outside looking at a fan sign, and I was like, "Are you okay?" He's like, "Yeah, I lost, and I disappointed myself and everyone." And he kind of sat there like sad for a long time. He was really hard on himself, even though they lost that finals. He's a very self-critical player. Yeah, I think again, if I had to choose between Noah and Jun is for sure the better part of that bot lane and the best player on the team. I think the funny thing to me that the only inside drama we get sometimes, or inside we get, is scrims, right? And, you know, obviously we can't watch scrims. But I remember when Irrelevant was here, he was like, Jun, like, that guy is Korean. You know, he's not fake Korean. I was like, what the fuck do you mean by that? He's like, that guy's for real Korean. I hope he shows up on the international stage. I hope he shows up because his champ pool mechanics are really top tier. All right, Lehens. It's funny because I remember the last thing I watched was that voice com video where Lehens in game 5 said, "I'll go any." And then Chovy was like, "Please don't go any." And the coach was like, "No." And Lehens was like, "Yeah, I'll go any." Yeah, I mean, Gen G's weakness is their bot side, right? But Lehens, do you count shot calling as tier list, you know? I think you don't, most cases. And if it's just, the reason no, it's why? Because it's kind of unquantifiable as an analyst or viewer, right? It's not something that's a known quantity. So as a player, he's quite difficult, actually. Shot call tier list. It's an overall package. Obviously, I'm thinking between S and A. If I remember a lot of things about Lehens, he's a Nautilus main. He will play range supports. When he plays range supports for Pace, he does look kind of invisible, but his range support play is good. He just doesn't have as much impact on the map as when he plays like Nautilus. But then I compare it to someone like Delight, you know, and when Delight plays Nautilus in some of their Hammer Life series, the stark difference, for example, of Nautilus in this series versus like Lehens Nautilus sometimes is quite crazy. Him and Delight are the two things that shine to me when it comes to Nautilus. What else do I think about Lehens? I think he's a downgrade from Delight personally, because I feel like Gen G's team fights, They looked a lot more snappy and decisive when they had the light. Now it looks a little bit not all over the place, you know, but comme ci, comme ça. He's solid. He won't counterpick you and win lane super hard. He won't have insane roams or, you know, but I think he's super veteran, super big voice. And he's kind of like the Mako of the LCK, you know, to me. He's a bit of a Mako in a sense. Just overall really solid. So I think he's like high A tier. He's kind of invisible sometimes. Not in the sense that he does nothing, but in the sense that, I mean, this roster has Chovy Canyon, right? This is Keen. This team is run through topside. This team is run through topside. Jun, same tier as Lehens. Yeah, I don't care. I don't care what you want to say. You can say, bro, I don't care about any of these arguments about 10th place LCK Jun on Kwangdong Freaks. Honestly, I don't care. Obviously, if you did this tier list last year, spring in the LCK, people would be like, what the fuck, you're crazy. But yeah, I think Jun has had one of the most insane years ever for like LEC supports. Keen was 10th once. True, Keen was 10th quite recently, wasn't he? He was 10th on Africa 2020 or some shit, wasn't he? Africa 21. All right, on to me, best support in the world, most complete support, insane engaged player. Sometimes he gets caught warding, which is like sometimes like the most degenerate thing I could say about him. He gets caught a lot sometimes, but most complete care, probably the best engaged support right now at the tournament. His play through BLG and the way he plays with Shun is perfect. His timers are perfect. Similar to Shun, his knowledge of just playing through bot, for bot, with bot, for bot dives to get bot ahead and play like the map is incredible. He can play range supports. He can play Nico support. He can play Kalista support, Orange support. I mean, look at his champion pool in the finals, right? It's not like he's an engaged support Andy. He's come a long way, you know? I feel like obviously it was him and Missing last year. JDG, BLG. Missing like overshined him. They were both like these Rakan mains. I feel like the quality that separates players at the top from players who are the best is you can have players who win regions and like are top 4 in the world, but then you can have players who will just pick anything that is necessary to win the game, right? Canyon's a good example. He'll pick Kha'Zix in that game. He'll pick Kane in that game. For example, this one where, you know, I know they lost the game, but the idea of playing Kalista there and denying Varus Kalista, love it. Into them to stop getting the pushing lane. They obviously played Draven and won anyway. You know, Barrel's another good example of someone who just pick whatever the fuck they need to. Like, he'll just play Zyra one game. This isn't champions that they play often. This is just whatever is needed to be played, I will do it. I'm a big fan of On. I think he doesn't really have any missing piece sometimes, you know. He does get caught warding sometimes, though. If I can remember off the top of my head from watching him this year, he sometimes goes by himself and kind of autopilots. Mako, my man. The surprising thing to me about Mako is, like, he's still going. And, like, last year, I actually thought towards the end of last year, when they were playing, like, the regional gauntlet, and it was, like, the Uzi, Mako, EDG roster, I thought Mako was trash. Like, I thought he was dog shit. You think back to EDG last year, him and Uzi, bro, in some of those the regional playoff best of fives, Mako was a liability. Like, he was running it. The split was fine, yeah, but the regional finals were disgusting. Like, that was fucking vile. And then he comes into this year on top, and he's really good. Yeah, you know what surprises me sometimes is I have this notion in my head when I watch players who have been playing for so long, like Mako's been playing for so long, that I feel like their mechanics get worse, and so they're less, how do I describe this? They're less willing or not as good as playing as like range supports, you know? So like Ashe support, for example, is a good example where I feel like, you know, the young'uns are crazy good at Ashe support because they're like mechanically lane gifted, whereas the old'uns are playing engaged supports like, yeah, it's fine, we'll lose lane. But Mako still, he's got it. He's still got those range supports. He's been around for a hell of a long time, and he's still got those range supports on lock. And yeah, his Ashe in the finals was great. His Ashe overall is great. His Nami is really insanely good. Mako is a fucking insane Nami. And he fits Jackie Love really well. Mako, I feel like Jackie Love has instilled the Jackie Love mentality into Mako, the degeneracy, you know? And they play the lane well together. The problem I'm having with Mako is, does he go here or here? Because honestly, I think Mako is basically almost just as complete. I'm going to put Mako in S tier, I think. Every time I watch Mako and Jackie Love, I think their lane phase is quite strong. I think Mako, maybe in some people's minds, I feel like when people see Mako on the international stage, okay, so there's viewers in League that only tune into international events, and they don't watch regular season, and they don't watch LPL and stuff like that. And when Mako rocks up to international, everyone's like, oh, this old washed guy is here. And I think he'll surprise a lot of people. It feels weird. Okay, so again, I have issues with tier lists because it feels weird to put On in the same tier list as Mako, but it also feels weird to put On in the same tier list as Jun, but I think Jun is very good. A part of me wants to push everyone down a little bit because I think On is a standout above Mako, but I want to put Jun high up. So I'm going to put Jun down one and then put Mako down one and keep it like this, because otherwise it feels very odd to have it looking like this, you know. There we go. That's better. Is that better? I want Mako in a separate tier to Jun, but I don't want Mako in the same tier as On, and that's why I hate tier lists. So I'm just gonna do that. Suck my cock. All right. Anyway, yeah, these are the supports so far. On best support in the world easily. Mako incredibly impressive. He's got On attributes as well. Top esports are a lot less consistent in being able to execute through bot matchups that are winning with jungle. And I think that stems from all three of them. But I do think top esports bot lane, including Mako, gets sold out a lot because of TN. I wonder what top esports would look like if you swapped junglers from BLG and top. Would Jackie Love and Mako be able to pull off the same as what Elk and Honor are doing in the early stages for bot advantages with Shun on their team? And I think they probably could. So that's why I had like this argument in my head where Mako, I think, could be S tier next to On. But I'm going to drop him a tier because obviously that is that's all theory. That's all theory. All right, let's do a couple quick things. Busio, I think we'll put him in like C tier. I think Busio is... maybe we'll put him in B tier. Maybe we'll put him C tier. Yeah, Busio and Masu, again, I don't think there's much more to touch on here. In isolation, not great. Their weak lane phase, sometimes liability, you know, kind of like rookies to international stage. I also don't think their way of playing... Like, I think a big deal for me when it comes to bot lane, and I think both are held accountable for this sometimes, is playing winning bot matchups. Like Kalista lanes or any kind of pushing... I think, okay, how do I describe this? Any kind of punishing lane that needs to play for dive, not so much pushing and advantages. Because I think Busio, to me, is a good range support player. Like, I think he'll probably be able to play things like... I don't know, what range support does he play? What's Ashe or some shit, or... I don't know. What does he play the split? Every time I watched him, I thought he was like a Lulu Ashe player or something. Yeah, Karma, Seraphine, Nico, Bard, he'll play range supports. Renata, you know, absolute range support. But when it comes to playing bot matchups that you'll see at MSI, and you're against these high-tempo teams that stack waves and stuff like that and play with melee supports into dives, I don't think that FlyQuest bot lane can keep up. And I also don't think they'll get the resources to keep up. Core JJ, I think I'm a big fan of Core JJ. Again, another unquantifiable when it comes to comms and stuff. It's not hard, actually. Core JJ is a really good support. Really, really good. I think him and Impact, to me, are like staples of Team Liquid, and I've said that before. And I'm a big fan of Core JJ. I would put him next to Jun. Yeah, okay, I'm going to put Core JJ next to Jun. I'm going to put a gap and then put Busio. I think Core JJ is kind of... You know, Jun has these flashy mechanics, but Core JJ is super stable and reliable. Keria and Mickey X. Listen, I'm going to put Keria top of A tier. I think Keria individually, incredibly talented support. I think the meta for him isn't perfect, so he's not S tier. And I think people want me to put Keria in S tier, but I'm not going to do it because Keria's not going into S tier for a few reasons. Reason number one, I've said it before, but I think Keria is really, really flashy and really, really impressive when it comes to playing against mid-bottom tier teams, because his champion pool feels like an ocean in metas that are stale. When it's a stale meta, Keria is very talented at playing off-meta champions to punish mid-bottom tier teams. However, against top-tier teams, when the meta is stale and it's Nautilus, Rakan, and Ashe is permanently banned against him, I'll give him, you know, Ashe is perma-banned against him. When he's playing, you know, Ashe Rakan or Lulu or Nautilus, and this split as well, he would play Tahm Kench and Gumayushi would play Senna, and all he would be doing is Tahm Kench just farming, you know. When the meta is stale, Keria's impact becomes a lot less. However, when the meta is a lot more free, you know, and he can play these punishing bots, you know, like Renata, and he can play Ashe support and it's open, then he is a lot stronger. That's, to me, Keria's biggest quality. He's the best range support player in the world. And when that is available, he is insanely talented. But when Ashe is permabanned and Nautilus is first picked, like that Hamalife series, I just think Keria is... There's not much he can do. We'll pick Senna and I'll play an engaged support or something. I just think that On is a better melee support player than Keria. If it was more range support heavy, he would be easily S tier on my list. On is better engaged support player, and that's the difference maker here. And that's why T1 fans, I'm sorry, and you're probably going to hate me, and I don't want you to hate me for this, but just think that the two best players for me on T1 are Faker and Guma. Zeus is struggling. Keria, the meta isn't good for him, and so I feel like that hits both of them down a little bit to A tier. All right, Mickey X. Mickey X. To me, the funny thing about Mickey X is I think Mickey X is the core next to Caps of a lot of G2 success, a lot of it. The problem Mickey X has is he has games where he fucking runs it down and he looks like a disgusting inter. I think so I guess the best way to describe my idea of Mickey X is if Caps was the best player that the West was sending to compete against the East, Mickey X would be second place, if that makes sense. And I think he's shown it before, and I think he's shown it many times at internationals before. That problem with Mickey X is he has games like Winter Finals where he will run the whole game down sometimes, like that Nautilus game, and it will stick in people's minds a lot. And then they'll ignore him playing really well throughout the regular season, and then he'll play a Nautilus game, and he'll run it down, and then everyone will target Mickey again. And I am not going to discredit the idea that Mickey has had games where he has misplayed a lot, gotten caught, and he has this style where once he starts inting, he does not stop. And I wish I could give it to you better in analytical terms to tell you why he is continuously chain inting. But maybe there's some kind of thing going on with G2 where if they fall behind and Mickey can't get vision by himself, then the game just becomes more difficult and he gets perma-caught. I do think Mickey X is a really talented player, and meta's pretty good for him. I think G2 rely on him a lot, and I think he's better than Jun. I'll put him at the edge of A tier. I think he's next to Lehens, but I don't. Obviously, he's on an S tier support, and I'm not putting him above Keria for the memes. I apologize, Last Worlds. I was wrong. I know Last Worlds I put Mickey over Keria, and obviously, turned out T1 won the tournament. But I want you to understand that the way these tier lists work is this is what they look like coming into the tournament, but when the tournament happens and ends, what they look like is a lot different sometimes, right? That's why I think T1 is a great example of, I think Dom said it correctly, T1 is great and Genji are sometimes great if they don't choke at internationals because the tournament is longer and they can figure out the patch more and they can refine the patch better over time. MSI is shorter, and that's why I think EU and LPL teams succeed more so LPL teams recently, because they just keep it up and they don't have enough time to figure it out and slow it down. Yeah, I don't think the patch right now is very good for T1. It's not... I know there's Galio buffs and there's Camille buffs for top. I don't think the patch is good for their jungle support. It's not perfect. And that's why I think Keria is top of A tier. And it's similar for Bin, for example. I don't think the top meta is perfect for Bin. And I think that is a good thing to take into account when doing these tier lists. Those are my tier lists. I'm sorry if I offended any fan bases. I hope no one takes a screenshot and looks at it without context. I hope I gave enough context. This was on the fly. And I don't think I'm ever going to do this live again because chat was just spamming, hurry up, get to the point. I wish maybe I should have spent more time on it. Tier lists are tier lists. Let's see how they perform in internationals. You can only address theory so much. Please do not say you're going to send me death threats for putting your favorite player lower than they should be.